Ladies and gentlemen, you're here. Tuesday evening, it is of the people. Now, you might be a little bit confused. You might be saying to yourself, Ericka, I see you, but where's Robert? Who's this man that is with you? It is Jay the Shepard, ladies and gentlemen, filling in for Robert Chernin, who's a little bit under the weather today. He's got whatever bug is going around making everybody sick. Thank you, Jay Shepard, for joining me this evening.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on the show. I think it's really great. I do think, though, that Robert at 30% is probably better than me at 100%.
Oh,
But
no.
we have to do what we have to do to get by.
We're going to slog through it, I guess, somehow.
And I do want to warn people, don't
Yeah.
expect anything brilliant from me, that I'm basically here as the eye candy.
Yes.
So I pretty much am going to do a lot of smiling and nodding and
Meow.
maybe even some pointing saying you're right.
Well, I appreciate you being my my hype man, Jay. I always need it. And in fashion of Mr. Robert Chernin, our illustrious host, I decided to start us off with some weird news. Okay, you ready for this? So, Wicked, have you seen the play Wicked, Jay?
I have not, but my family has and told me all about it.
Okay. So Wicked, it's a play. It's a retelling of the Wizard of Oz from the evil witch's perspective, supposedly evil witch, right? That's the question. Is she really evil? I'm not going to tell you. You got to go see either the play or the movie. But here's the thing. Mattel, as is with most Disney products, has a toy line. They made a toy line. Did you hear about this, Jay?
I have not.
Okay, so they made a toy line for the Wicked movies. And as it turns out, somehow a website for a porn site ended up on the box of a children's toy.
I did see that. I did see that story.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you do not need more proof of the degeneracy and filth of Disney, of Mattel, of these people out there, they are coming for you and your kids. So they're getting sued. They're getting totally sued because,
and they should.
Yep, they're getting sued. Apparently, they found the mistaken printing and they recalled it on November 11th. But, ladies and gentlemen, how many layers? Jay, you're an advertising executive, okay? Right? You are an advertising exec. How many layers and layers of approval have to be gone through for something like that to make it to market?
Well, it makes you wonder whether it's intentional or not. It makes you wonder whether they're really trying to influence and who along the line allowed it to happen.
Correct.
Now, there's some possibility that 2 or 3 layers said, this is what it should be. The next layers changed it. So you don't know where in the process and who is the one responsible for making it happen. And a little bit on an aside, I mean, if you're out there and you find this could be a collector's item for some people. And some people might be taking the boxes and making some money saying it's limited edition. There's only, 100 of them that actually weren't recalled. And maybe there's someone along the line that's decided that, it's going to be the 1955 double die penny that was a mistake, and somebody's going to be making a lot of money on this. And it's not out of the realm of possibility, because the reality is not only is Disney and Mattel trying to influence our children to the wrong side, but they're looking for ways of making money any way that they can. And the publicity surrounding this might have been part of their plan, and they're willing to sacrifice our children to make an extra buck.
That's right. That's right. All right, you guys, hang on. We're going to roll the credits and be back with our first guest. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our first guest this evening is Mr. Luke Moon from the Philos Project. Luke, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Totally great.
Fantastic. We are so happy to have you. Now, the Philos Project and Luke, we just want to first extend a special thank you. You were one of the early sponsors and supporters of the Israel Appreciation Day, and that energy and that fight for us early on really made a big difference. And so we just want to extend a huge thank you to you and the Philos Project.
Well, I'm here for the fun and games and the fights too.
I love it. Speaking of fun and games and fights, okay. Now, the Philos Project is really interesting. So you guys, it's like education, it's advocacy. You're bringing people over to Israel to do like tours and teach. What would you say like what would you say is really the core of the Philos Project? I mean, I can read the mission on the website, right? We
Right.
can all read your mission statement, but what to you is really the core of what you guys do?
Well, at the core, my job is to get Christians to support Israel and the Jewish people. That's the bottom line. That's
Yeah.
what I do. That's what I spend my day doing. That's what whether it's talking to Latinos about it, Catholics, evangelicals, African Americans, like it's a constant drip of me and my team basically saying, hey, Christians, this is important, not just for your faith, but for Western civilization.
Yeah.
Western civilization is as much, a lot of people like to say it's, Rome and Athens, but it's actually got a lot of Jerusalem in there.
Yeah.
And so it's helping people to connect with the roots of Western civilization that are often overlooked because they got pulled into Rome or Athens somehow.
Well, and I think it's interesting because when I got saved about 10 years ago or so. And when I got saved and I started learning about this faith, this savior that I had accepted, my Messiah, and I learned right away that he was Jewish from, the Middle East, was not the light-skinned, blonde, wavy-haired Jesus that I saw on my grandmother's wall. But like, are there really, maybe this is a silly question, naive. Are there that many Christians who don't really get that we follow a Jewish Messiah and that it's founded from that region?
Well, I don't know. I think the issue is that they might know, but they don't actually care.
Okay.
And that to me is an important distinction because
Okay.
I think there is this rise of anti-Semitism around the world, not just in America, but around the world.
Yeah.
And to me, it's actually rooted in the fact that God chose a people on this earth in whom to invest his plan for the world, his redemptive plan for the world. He gave a people the blueprint for humanity on a mountain in Sinai. And that was supposed to go to the whole world. And in the book of Isaiah, it talks about the nations shall go up to the mountain of the Lord. They will learn of the God of Jacob. The word will go forth from Zion, law of the Lord to the ends of the earth. And what happens there in that picture that Isaiah is presenting is then they shall turn their swords into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks, right? Like, yeah, God gives the blueprint for peace on this earth, and it's going through Zion, which means that you're connecting with a place and a people that still exists.
Wow.
And so that's what I'm just trying to help people better understand, that it's, yes, Jesus was Jewish and all the apostles and, Mother Mary and everybody in the Bible story was basically Jewish. But a lot of people can say, well, then so what? Like Israel and the Jews were an egg from which Jesus hatched, and you kind of throw away the shell. And my case is that they are not, that they still play an important and special role in God's redemptive plan for the world.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I hear from most people who visit Israel is that the experience of walking the roads that Jesus walked, of climbing the hill or climbing, the mountains and doing all the things,
Yeah.
that it's just powerful and incredible. And it brings home their faith in a new way.
Let me tell you, Ericka, when the first time I went to Israel was 2012. And I remember going, I was up on the Mount of Olives, and it was cold and raining, and I was miserable because I didn't pack well. I was thinking I was going to the desert. Instead, I was like, oh, it's cold and freezing and snowing. What's up with this? And so later that night, I called my wife, and I was like, today I went up on the Mount of Olives, and I went to the place where Jesus supposedly ascended into heaven. And my wife says to me, what do you mean supposedly? And I was like, yeah, what do I mean supposedly?
Oh, wow.
No, I went to the place where Jesus ascended into heaven. And I was like it rocked my world, right?
Yeah.
It was like suddenly the words on the page, in black and white and sometimes red, like I was like, this is a place. These are real. This really happened. Like, and it hit me in a way that I had not expected. And it got under my skin, and I've gone like 40 times since. So it properly got under my skin.
Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed about the Philos Project is that you are taking young people to Israel. People are Catholic, or they're evangelical, or all different faiths, to go over and really understand what the story is and what the birth of our faith really is. As a Christian, and as a Catholic, we talk about Rome a lot and how we built the faith. But it all goes back to Jerusalem. It all goes back to Israel, that is the foundation of who we are as a people. And you don't have to be Jewish to understand that that's the birthplace of who we are and how we've evolved.
It's true, but let me give a couple of examples of where it's like even more tangible in the way we actually even think. Things like civil disobedience. The places where the Bible is the only place in all ancient texts where God, the God of whoever, the God of the universe, is affirming civil disobedience, because oftentimes in a lot of places the king was the god, a demigod, Pharaoh was the god, or Caesar was the god. But here in the Bible you find that God is God, and when he says to when he protects when the midwives of Cana, not the midwives of Cana, midwives of the book of Exodus, of basically Moses,
right?
When the midwives disobeyed Pharaoh's command to kill all the baby boys,
that's right.
In Exodus it says that they were blessed for that. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the book of Daniel, another example of where these guys don't bow their knee to Nebuchadnezzar and are thrown into the fiery furnace, and they're freed, and suddenly everybody's like, it completely changes the game, right? Those are a couple of that's just like civil disobedience. We affirm as a nation civil disobedience, and where does it come from? It comes from the Bible. The difference between nations and empire. God, in his conversation with Abraham, he says, here's the borders of the land I will give you, from the Lebanon in the north to the Euphrates to the river in the south. He gives this land. What is he doing there? He's saying I affirm nations, not empires. Wow. Nowhere in the Bible does God affirm empires, but he does affirm nations, and nations have borders. And he doesn't say to Abraham, conquer as much as you want, go as far as you can, take it all, dude, just take it all. Wow. He doesn't say that. He actually limits the people of Israel to a geographic area and boundaries. And that to me says, okay, God affirms nations, and therefore nations are good, and therefore we should affirm nations. We should affirm borders, like the southern border and the northern border. And
I have never heard anyone say anything like that before, Luke. Oh. I have never heard anyone say that before. That makes so much sense. I mean, of course, if there's all these other places in the Bible that give us revelation of how, like, the best ways to live, and how, not to be a dirtbag, don't steal things, don't covet whatever. There is so much more in the Bible if we actually take the time to study it and learn
that's the thing, is that most, like, the people who came across on the Mayflower, they read Hebrew. Okay. The people who wrote Magna Carta, they read Hebrew. They're like the people who are like the most read book of the Bible by the founding fathers was the book of Deuteronomy. Why? Because nation building comes out of the Hebrew part of the Bible.
Wow.
The New Testament is about personal relationships. Husbands, love your wives. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. The relationship between slave and free people, like it's between Jews and Gentiles. It's about relationships and interpersonal relationships and relationship with God. Well, if you want to build a nation, you read the Hebrew Bible. And if you're reading a nation like the founding fathers were, they're like, where do I get this stuff? Oh, maybe I get it in the Bible. And the thing is, like, there's this ad on TV or on the radio every once in a while. Yeah. And it's like, it's for like some counseling website or something like that. And they're like,
yeah,
if only there was a blueprint for life. I'm like yelling, there is. It's the Bible. It's in the Bible. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that we sometimes forget as Christians is the importance of the Old Testament and what it provides for us, that there is no New Testament. There is no Jesus without the Old Testament. And in my family, we talk about it all the time, that we don't spend enough time celebrating the Jewish holidays, that it is such an important part of who we are and how our faith has developed that we sometimes ignore the greatness of it. And when you talk about nation building, it really is a guidebook that tells us this is how society should exist. Yeah. And it's beyond religion. It's much more about who we are and how we have to provide for the common good and make sure we're doing the things that take care of our people every day. And it's really exciting. And I'm going back to one of the things that we talked about earlier, is the fact that you're bringing people over to Israel, that you're bringing them over. And can you tell me a little bit about what they're learning and how their lives are changed after coming back, and how they become better members of our society that can say, we need a border. We need to have a society that's fair and just. So if you could touch on some of that.
Yeah.
Great question, Jay.
I think the most important thing that I've seen is really connecting people again with like the reality of the scripture. That's what comes to life. I have this talk that I give every trip at this point knows it, and they're kind of anticipating it. I think they bet on when it's going to come, but I call it Matter Matters, right? Like the stuff of the earth, the matter of this world matters. Like it's not enough just to think good thoughts in our head, but there's a physicality to reality and to the world in which God engaged himself. Like incarnation, which we believe is God taking on flesh. Yeah. You eat carne asada. What does that mean? Like in the flesh, you eat like in the meat. And that's what God is coming down in the flesh. He could have just the whole time, forever and ever, have stayed, in the spiritual, but he took on flesh, and that helping people see that reality, and that there is a place on this earth that God chose to show himself and reveal himself and walk and talk and do the things that he did. It helps people, I think, better understand the meat and potatoes of their faith. Yeah. I mean, it really does make a huge difference to see this, because here's the thing is that, basically we all think like postmoderns, and postmodern people determine truth through logic, and not like modern people is like logic and reason determine truth. Right. Postmoderns, it's experience determines truth. And so experiences are so important for people of this generation to better understand reality and truth. And so by taking them to Israel, what I am doing is I'm giving them the experience to accompany what they read. And having those two things together makes such a big difference. It really does. It's life-changing for the individuals that go. We always hear that. But the other thing one of the things we do is we always do a Shabbat dinner with a family or families in the old city of Jerusalem. Why? Because the Shabbat service smashes together ancient and modern Israel. Why? Because they are praying over I've seen this so many times. It still like warms my heart and sometimes bring tears to my eyes. But I watch as fathers and mothers lay hands on their children and pray over them with the prayers that the patriarchs prayed over their children. That to me is incredibly powerful. And the fact that they do it week after week after week, every week, imagine like laying your hands on your kids and saying, like, we bless you and keep you, and I affirm you and I love you and you're and that affirmation a week, every kid in Israel gets that affirmation every Friday night.
Wow.
That is powerful. That kind of stuff, like people begin when they come back, they adopt that stuff into their own lives and their own, they might not turn off their cell phones on a Friday night and sing some songs, but that weekly gathering around a table and having a meal, they begin to adopt that. And it is very transformational, Jay. It's a very powerful experience for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that would be for
anybody. It's easy sometimes to tell when you meet young adults whether or not they had dinner with their family on a regular basis, whether there was a set time where they come together to talk about the day and to talk about their faith in a prayer before meals, and what a difference that makes in bringing a family together and how they're able to relate so well with society because they have that foundation of faith in their home and they can bring it out to the streets with them. And it's so great when I hear someone who says, my kid is easily influenced. I say, that's great because you have an opportunity to influence your child with a belief in God and what it means to be a good citizen and a good person.
And speaking of being a good citizen and a good person, let's hear from our sponsor, American Center for Education and Knowledge. Stay with us, you guys. We'll be right back with Luke Moon from the Philos Project, learning more about all